when your product is almost proven and you need to move into the commercialization. And I think that's not only UAE, it's a global kind of challenge. And I think that also goes back to the beginning of developing your technology. Are you solving a problem or not?
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to differentiate between your customer and your end user. And in most cases in the farming, the farmer themselves might be the end user of your product,
but not
the customer.
Yeah.
So somebody else is going to pay for that technology or that product. So I think there are many examples. A few years back in the UK, we were working with one of the agri-tech startup using satellite imagery.
Right.
And their customer was a bank in Africa.
Yeah.
Why? Because the bank is lending finance. They need to make sure the farmers using the finance to grow the crop. So it's de-risking their loan and their finance. How they operate now, so someone from the bank need to go check the farmers. You have thousands of farmers.
Yes.
It's a very costly operation.
Yeah.
So what they've done is say, well, we can use the satellite imagery. We can tell which field is growing or not.
Yes. Yeah. And that's
it's
the proxy
a very
then
simple. And then you are a bank manager. You have a screen.
Yeah.
You can click in any field. You can see if the crop is growing or not. So. And the farmers get the benefit because they have an access to the platform. And now they can think, well, I can use this to manage my fertilization program, for example. So they get the benefit and they get used to it. So you package it as a service for farmers, but the bank, they get a better visibility in terms of who's growing what. So that's really one of the key, understanding the problem, understanding the customer and end user, but also how we can create this ecosystem. So what we provide in here, and we have many startups currently working here, working on soil improvement, greenhouses, desalination. So all of that. And the idea is say, well, let's validate and help you to develop a commercially viable product or a service that you can go into the market. And what is important about Silal and Innovation Oasis, because we have that ecosystem as well. We have a commercial arm that we are selling this product and services for living. So it's not only helping you to develop, but we have a means and mechanisms and reach.
Yeah.
So we can help you to develop that. So I think that's the unique about Innovation Oasis and Silal in general.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is and it's almost like you're answering the questions before I've asked them, where what you have is Silal Innovation Oasis is actually a physical place that is acting as a nexus between private sector, whether it's startups or the end users or the customers, academia, research being elevated into practical application and then hopefully commercialization. You've also got, government that is looking in, certain countries, those grants end up being the catalyzer for this kind of work. And, then when we talk about financing, when these startups are all trying to scale, that there might be investors that are interested or corporates that are looking to pick up or invest in such technologies. And by virtue of all of this being in the same place, you're enabling it a lot quicker, specifically because it's so complex. This proximity is a big part of the deal, so to speak.
Exactly. But also we can help them to kind of define the problem statement, if you like. We've been talking to many companies in the past few years. So there are certain time when they present their technology and you're thinking it's a great technology, but might not be a right kind of problem. There are other areas that you can apply this and has a much better sort of a value and impact. So I think this is really where you need a physical foundations and capabilities, and that's what we built.
Yeah.
But also you need that sort of connections with the market, with the policymakers, with finance, with the investors. So you creating an ecosystem saying, well, actually, this is the right place I need to be, because I can access different areas that I need to grow my business.
And what in those partnerships, what is ideal? I mean, you spoke to it earlier about grants coming from government. I think that's a key part, and we've done some work with Silal where we looked at the map globally for these setups, and government grants are a key part of that. What do you think are other partnerships that are critical? Maybe from the private sector side or from academia, what has to happen for this to be, delivering over and above?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to the grant, just to kind of clarify, there are different type of grant currently available in the UAE, but I think, having a specific sort of a funding that can de-risk some of these ideas and attracting some of this startup, that's a good sort of a landing pad for companies to come in and work. I think what we seen in terms of the finance and investment side of it as well. I mean, UAE, you can access different.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of them, right? So I think this is where this sort of, I mean, there are different models. We work in the UK, was quite popular and still. So there are like a public-private funding mechanism.
Yes,
so
PPPs are big here as well. Absolutely.
Exactly. So you create a funding pot, if you like. Say, well, if you are a company, you need to work with maybe an academic partners, a university, nationally or internationally. And then the cost of that project or that development is going to be 50-50. So you contribute 50% and the government will give you a 50%.
Yeah.
I think the key is we need to take a lot of risk when it comes to the startup and research and development as well. So you might fund, I don't know, 100 or 1,000. If a few of them become successful, that will create more jobs, more economic impact, and then start kind of exporting the innovation to the rest of the world. Because I think one point is very important, which probably we didn't mention yet, why this innovation oasis and this facility and this organization is important is because we know globally we are moving into climate change, and that will what that bring to the other country is, excuse me, is lack of rain, drought. The soil quality is going to be poorer. The water is going to be less available. And we are dealing with all these issues right now.
Yes, that's true.
So you can think about innovation oasis, but also the UAE is a testbed of technologies for the climate change and future-proofing the global food supply chain. Because if we find a solution for our challenges here and increasing our productivity and our food production, other countries in a decade or two, they're going to have very similar challenges. And that's really the attraction. And that's why we've been working with many international companies, seed companies, global seed companies, developing a seed that is more resistant to heat and drought and salinity, because they know UAE market, GCC market, and even Middle East market is not a big market for them. There are much bigger market globally, right? But they know those mega market globally in a decade and so, they're going to face the same problem. So if we are working with them now, developing this solution, which is good for us, for our farmers, for our food security, for our food production, but it's going to be relevant to the rest of the world. And I think that's really the right time and the right place to really think and attracting this startup researchers, partners, global multinational companies to work together and then building this solution that can solve the problems of food security and food production for us, but also is going to be relevant to the other countries in the future.
I think that's what resonates the most with what Soma MATER was built for. We know that this region is probably one of the most challenged when it comes to weather and geography for agriculture and for food production. But parts of the world are gravitating towards this kind of an environment because of climate change.
Yeah.
What we want to be able to do, and we say this all the time to our clients, is the UAE and Abu Dhabi specifically is looking to be the lab and the test for all of that future environment. And so technologies that can be validated here become exportable for the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's really the key for us to become a global leader in a desert agri-tech and then the development of this kind of solution, because we have all the means. I mean, we're only talking about the agriculture and farming, but if you look at the food supply chain and the food industry, I mean, UAE in terms of logistics and connections and all of that is a huge important. It's not like just building and you know, kind of producing the products, but also how you're gonna develop a more resilient food supply chain, because we've been doing this for decades and is very well established. But in the meantime, there are many other exciting stuff happening in the UAE, especially in Abu Dhabi and I'm sure in other Emirates. You know, the level of investment and push on AIs and robotics. So all of that, it will give you a wider ecosystem that you are not only operating with, you know, farming, agriculture, and food, but also you have access to the top talent when it comes to AI and robotics. And there are many, many other organizations doing a fantastic and amazing job. So we can link with these entities and bring this kind of transferable advancement in AI and technologies to apply and do this. And we're about to launch in a few projects, inshallah.
Okay, we're looking forward to that. And I want to double down on that talent comment that you made. All of this doesn't happen in a void or just through technology. And there's a lot of talented people that work to bring these things to light. I wonder how the Silal IO works when it comes to sourcing talent and finding, whether it's startups and, you know, innovative founders or, you know, the people that work here. How are you reaching out and finding these people and engaging them in what the Silal IO mission is?
Sure. So I think the talent, maybe probably I'll point out three areas. One, you rightly said, when it comes to the startup, these are really important. These innovators, they have ideas, they already spend, you know, time and money to develop it. So I think because of the attraction of UAE as a country, there is a lot of, you know, the
influx of people.
Exactly, is coming, and when they are coming here, who's doing what? Silal is obviously one of the leader in agri-food, so we get a lot of inbound of companies. So we have that. So the other part of talent is, the second one is actually a top scientists, researchers, and I think that's really what we're trying to build ourselves, but also to work with other universities and research organizations, because our ambition is not to become a university. We want to work with universities. You know, like we have a partnership with Khalifa University with their robotic department, right? So I don't have to bring the robotic scientists to do work here. I can work with them.
Muhammad
bin Zayed University for AI, we're working with all the researchers. So I think that's important, you know, kind of tapping into the talent already exists in the country. But also we need to have our core scientists and researchers at Innovation Oasis. This is more specialists in a specific areas, and that's really one of our partnership with Lemagrain, which we announced a few months ago. As part of that, we're going to recruit the top scientists when it comes to the genetics, the bioinformatics, because you need that core team to work with all the partners. You cannot rely on the university researchers and scientists, but you need to have the expert in-house to do that, because we are planning to increase our own in-house innovation as well. And the third part of the talent, which is really important for us, is a local talent, right? So you have that global influx of talent from startups, scientists, researchers, locally as well internationally. But we need to sort of develop this, you know, the local talent, the next generation, if you like. So back in February, we started a new program we call a Future Innovator. So these are Emirati graduate from university, specifically agriculture and food.
Yeah.
We have 12 interns in this internship program. And the idea is to work with us for 1 year.
Yeah.
So they started in February and they've done a lot of training. We put them on a different sort of a function within Innovation Oasis just to kind of explore where their interests are.
Yeah.
Are you interested to work in the lab? Are you interested to work in the field, to do trial, to do disease diagnostic assessment? So we done like a rotation, and then we fixed them in their preferable teams. And they done some other training like project management, leadership, and all of that. And the idea is to really have that pipeline of local innovators, because if this place and Innovation Oasis become an anchor for innovation, we need to make sure there is a cross-fertilization of knowledge and expertise from all these amazing scientists and researchers coming from all over the world, but we need to build our own local talent. So I think talent is important, and we invest in people because ultimately the easy part is building this facility. The challenging part, bringing the right people to generate the new ideas, the new solutions, and keeping and maintaining this talent pool is really, really important.
And when you have the infrastructure, you have the talent, you have all of these startups and researchers and everything, I wonder what's the role of policymakers to either create an environment that can catalyze all of this? Because ultimately, when you're doing essentially all of this for agriculture and for the end user being farmers, there is always a need for some form of regulation. But what are the policymakers' role in all of this?
Sure. No, absolutely. I think there is a huge role for the policy. So, you can take any example like, water, for example. You might develop a fantastic solution if the policy is not aligned to deploy, or at least to
adopt to
increase the adoption of this technology, then you kind of missing the point. And I think one of the other advantage of UAE is the innovation even within the policy.
Yes,
you know what I mean. So it's very difficult if you are operating in US or in Europe in general. So the change of policies, the regulations is so kind of
slow.
Hindering.
Yeah, it can be a little bit, as you mentioned right at the beginning of this interview, where we move fast.
Exactly.
Right? And things can turn on a dime. And that's, I think, critical to be able to allow innovation to move as fast as it can.
And I think in the policy is moving fast, but is a calculated kind of a decision. It's not like just, bringing any policy. But my point is, I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was in Abu Dhabi in Formula One.
Yeah.
There was a race between a human driver and AI.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear about that.
And I think the human was faster by a split second.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was talking to the organizer, and we had the discussion about how impressive it is, driving hundreds of miles an hour without human is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it, the logistics, the technology, the level of effort is going to that kind. And he said one thing that was very interesting. He said, if we want to do this test in Europe, it might going to take like, years to just get all these approvals and all of that stuff. However, we can do that here, and we can provide all these safety measures.
Yes,
there is a like an openness around
innovation. Absolutely,
and you trying to develop a policy and a regulation that can enable innovation. And I think that's a really, really important. And I think we are moving in the right direction, that the policy need to allow the innovation in a right way, in a safe way, in a making sure we are not harming, our land, our water, our farmers, but in the same time allowing the startup and innovators to come up with, sometimes I call it crazy ideas. Let's do it in a protected, in a control environment
Yeah.
and see what's the implication even for the policy, and the policy need to kind of adjust and making sure everything is done in the right way.
And we've seen this over the last, I want to say 5 years now. There's a lot more, there are a lot more sandboxes, right? Sort of spaces that are safe for startups or technologies to deploy what they do and to be observed, so regulators can better understand. There's also the political will of leadership in this country that has been, I think, one of the most exciting things to be a part of, where the intention is we must move forward, and we're not afraid to move forward. Where in many other established countries, there's this concern about parties being taking negative impact or otherwise. Here, the progress is a critical part of the national strategy, and that disseminates through government, the private sector, and it allows for innovation to become so fluid, as it were.
Exactly. And I think that's really important. That vision from the leadership is to, yes, you need to take a risk. You need to take a calculated risk. And that's really gonna help us to come into the next solutions, the next innovation much quicker than anybody else globally. And I think that environment itself is not only in farming, but in general as a country. You have that space and you have that vision and drive to move faster, but go with a proper calculations and proper assessment and making sure you are adding value. I think that's the key, how we can add value while we are moving fast. It might be for our company, for our farmers, for our country, but it's important to have that sort of a North Star. This is where we are going, but we need to go fast, better, more efficient, and at the end of the day, to have a benefit to the society. That's why we're here. And that's why farming is so exciting, right? So that's why I left geology and thinking, water, and I can do a bit, but because it's related to the human livelihood. And it's something you cannot really, when you are in, it's very difficult to get out.
So you talked earlier about food security for the nation, and really for any nation. The UAE is becoming a leader in sustainable agriculture, and it is through technology, through its practices, through its ecosystems of which you're a part of. I wonder, what do you think is still maybe the missing piece for us to go global and have that exportable knowledge that you were sharing with us earlier?
Well, I think maybe I can just elaborate a little bit on the food security term itself, because I think sometimes people use it in a different context, as a sort of a
catch-all that a lot of people use.
And then self-sufficiency. So I think that's two different things.
Absolutely.
Food security, self-sufficiency. We are trying to increase our local production. That's our mandate. That's our goal. And that's why we're here, right? So I think when it comes to the food security, what UAE is doing, if you look at the entire supply chain, from farming, we discuss, we are a test bed for the climate change, we can develop a new solution. So that's clear. And really, this is what we want to, export, this kind of an innovation to the other part of the world where they're going to face similar problems in the future. But the other important part is the logistics and the supply chain management. And I think the model UAE is building is very much kind of transferable to other countries and nations. One other area is actually around that resilience of the supply chain, because we all know during COVID, the disruption was really a wake-up call for everyone, across the globe. It was like, say, how we, the supply chain is not quite resilient. And I think this is where the technology can play a huge role. We still have a huge fragmented data and information in a supply chain. And I think the vision is to how we can make that supply chain more efficient, more resilient, and more visible to the players, because you have many companies, organizations playing a role. And I think what we can export as a model of food security is our desert farming technologies, desert farming solution, our ability to manage our supply chain more efficiently and more resilient, but more importantly, how we interacting on a global stage as well. That might be a more, kind of a relationship with different nations that really has a mutual kind of a benefit of creating a more stronger connection. And UAE is leading on that as well. And you are quite aware of all these sort of partnership with many, many countries, because ultimately, when it comes to food security, we are all secure if all the countries are secure.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of, we cannot be secure if our partners, they cannot grow better.
Yes.
They cannot sustain their farming. So that's why some of the solutions we are developing, it's going to help the other farmers from other countries, the neighboring countries, but also in other countries that we have a relationship with. And I think UAE is leading on that side as well. There is many initiatives and investment goes to other countries where they have more natural resource, soil, land, water. So you need to kind of have that sort of a overall model that can be replicated elsewhere, and they can create a much securer food for everyone.
Yeah, we hear it often where people will think that food security means you produce everything for yourself. And there isn't a country today that can do that. More so, it's that combination of what you grow in country and what you trade into country. And the UAE has a combination. When we've done food security strategies, it's always about looking at that food balance sheet, if you will, about what you can. And then you create strategies for redundancy and capability. But in a crisis, whether you've parked a ship in the Suez Canal, or you're sitting and looking at conflict holding back trade, redundancy, capabilities in country are important, and ultimately also being smart about what resources are being distributed for what purpose. I think the world still has a lot it can learn from the UAE and the region, and how we're innovating and what we can export. And Soma is part of, delivering that message. And, being able to work with people like yourselves has been a big, benefit for being able to share and learn together. That lays out maybe my last question, where I'd ask you, Dr. Shamal, what does the next 5 years look like for you and for the Silal Innovation Oasis?
Right. Well, I think that's a very good question for the final question, right? So I think for us, we are now finished over 5 years, if you like. So starting from basically a new company, new R&D function, new facility, we probably done quite a bit in the last few years. 40 plus projects, many partners, creating this sort of a ecosystem, connecting with right-minded organization, universities, startups, and all of that. So it's been a really a good kind of a moving forward. In my view, we are just started. So we are just gearing up, and we making sure we are ready to move. And I think for the next 5 years, our ambition to be a global hub, a global ecosystem, and a leader in a desert farming. And that's really our ambition. And we trying to focus on some of the transformative project and partnership. Of course, we're still doing the things that can be applied to the farmers next season, next year. That's really important. We need to really improve year on year. However, there are certain projects we are working on, and partnership we are building is to bring that sort of a transformation in agriculture. And our partnership with Lemagrain, building a gene bank and advancement in the breeding to improve the variety performance for heat and drought and salinity. That's really a great initiative, which is going to take about 4 years. There are certain initiatives on robotics. We are working on some other modular farm powered by AI. We recently signed a collaboration. So I think the answer for farming and food system, unfortunately, is not going to be one solution.
Yeah.
We need to go back to the fundamental of soil and soil analysis, understanding what is there, doing a right agronomy and agronomic practice. In the meantime, we need to look at AI. We need to look at all the advancement in robotics and build that model that we were talking about, saying, well, actually, there is a solution and is cheaper than the existing way of operating farm, is producing more, is impacting the environment less, and providing the society and the public good quality fresh produce and making sure everyone is healthy, nutritious. So all of that is going to be really the things we are looking for in the next 5 years to make sure Innovation Oasis is the one place anyone globally thinking about solving a climate change problem and they need a test bed, they say, well, we need to go in and work with Innovation Oasis.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. We've been here a few times now, and it's always very exciting. For Soma, having worked with Silal and the Innovation Oasis, we see that this has been the sort of missing key, if you will, to bringing the nexus of academia, of the startups and the food system, both here and regional, together. And I look forward to maybe in 5 years, maybe before that, for us to have this conversation again.
Of course.
It struck me that we're also 5 years old as a company, so we'll be celebrating our next 5 years together as well. Dr. Shamaal, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate hosting us here at the Innovation Oasis.
No, absolute pleasure. And I think it was really good to have a proper discussion and just tell everyone what we've done and what we are doing. And we're looking forward to work with more talented people, startups, and making this place a place for innovation and finding a solution for the challenges we are facing all.
Well, hopefully all of us together. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.